Okay, thank God. MSC contacted me earlier in the day and told me that Creflo Dollar says he has seen the light and he no longer believes in collecting tithes. I would like to believe him out of the charity of God. But I think that it's a bit difficult when a man has already profited from error. And after he has profited from it, he now says he has seen the light. I have a book which I'm still tampering with, or whatever, however you can call it. I'm still trying to perfect on why pastors don't go to heaven. One of the reasons I put there is because they insist on tithes. And a long time ago, I said any pastor who collects tithe is a thief and a robber. And in my book, one of the people that I use that as an example, although I've been advised not to use their names, is actually Creflo Dollar. Because when Evander Holyfield was heavyweight champion, heavyweight boxing champion, he had a tendency to have a praise worship before every fight. Whenever he's questioned, he's always talking about Christ. To some extent, he's similar to Tyson Fury today. And so people were not sure about the nature of his faith. So they went to his pastor, who happened to be Creflo Dollar. And they said, you know, what kind of a Christian is Evander Holyfield? And his response really amused me, because he said, oh, he's a superlative Christian because he is a tither. In which case he defined his faith by the fact that he pays a tithe. As I pointed out then, Evander had a boxing match with Mike Tyson. And at that time, it was the highest paid boxing match ever. He was given 35 million for that fight. And he handed over 3.5 million of that money to Creflo. So I was a bit cynical. I said, well, it's not surprising that Creflo feels that he's a very good Christian, because if you can give 3.5 million of your hard-earned money to someone, you must be very good at whatever makes you do that. Another quotation that I included in my book was the one that even surprised me more than Creflo, because Creflo is now saying that he was in error, and that I have since seen the recording, since Yamsi spoke to me about it this morning. He says that if you have any book where he talks about tithe, any tape, any recording, please throw it away, because he's admitting that he was in error. There is no tithing under grace. To some extent, in this part of the world, I was one of the first people that started writing against tithing. And so, in fact, you know, it amuses me that if you Google tithing, you would see my name. And then the issue died up for some time until Daddy Freeze brought it out again. And Daddy Freeze brought it out in a much more dramatic fashion. You know, he had a bigger megaphone and he had, I suppose, a bigger platform. And it really disrupted the finances of the churches, that the churches were really upset. And recently, I happened on a directive that the General Overseer of the Redeemed Christian Church of God gave to his pastors, which I have also decided to include in my book. And what was so strange about that, he says that they should repent. Everybody should repent, and they should go back to their congregation and tell them in no uncertain terms that if they don't pay tithes, they will not go to heaven. And I felt, wow, this is now sounding like desperation. Obviously, the coffers of the church have been badly hit, that you can come and make such an outrageous statement that has no scriptural backing whatsoever from a man who is highly anointed and is a man of God. Why would he make this kind of, why would he tell this kind of lie? Anyway, that's a long introduction. So I thought today we should discuss the issue of tithe. I must tell you, is an area that I have done a lot of work in, so I might talk too much. Maybe it would have been better if I had presented it as a message, but let's still deal with it as a discussion. So let me start with, let me see, why was the law of tithing instituted? Why was it included in the law of Moses?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My understanding is, or my little understanding is that it was in order to provide for the less advantaged members of society. So if people brought in, and it was sort of connected with another requirement that people not harvest the whole of their fields, and they left a certain portion for the poor. So there was a, there were, I mean, all kinds of disadvantaged people, widows, orphans, and as a way of there being some kind of whether it was food bank or the way we have food banks now or whatever, the tithe provided for those kinds of people. Let's
sort of broaden it, because, you know, I mean, I started with the law of Moses, where people, you know, people that really want to defend the tithes always go back to Abraham. That was before the law. We'll come to Abraham. But you left out a critical element of the tithing principle in the law of Moses, which has implications for us. God gave Israel land, and then they divided it by tribe, by family, etc. But he said, don't give any land to the Levites. I am their portion. So the Levites were to receive no land whatsoever. Okay? All they did was to minister to God. That was their assignment. Then it has implications for us, because, you know, we are now ministers of our God. We are priests to God. because he has sacked the Levites. That might be a different issue, because the Levites did not do what was required. Anyway, so since the Levites did not have land, they could not save, they could not grow crops, they could not. So the tithe was instituted so that the Levites would have food to eat. So a critical element of the tithe to start with was to go to the Levite. And of course, as you said, it had other implications for the stranger, for the widow, for the poor. Yes, Dr.
Yeah, as you have said, the genesis of the whole thing actually has to do with the land. When he shared the land, and when he shared the land to some people and he didn't give the Levite, so in the land that he shared to them, whatever they get from that land, they will bring it to the house of the Lord. When they bring it, they come with their family to eat, and it has to be what comes from the land, which is fruit that comes from the land. And most of the things they bring is purposely for the less privileged, the widows, the orphan. Then the Levite. The reason why Levite was included was because Levite was not given land. They were not, he said God is their portion. So that's why at the time they said the house of the Lord shouldn't be empty, So, but the one that remain is what they eat after they have eaten together. And the one they remain is what they give to the Levite and the widow and all to take care of them.
That is
but people that were not given
hold on, Dr. That's not exactly true. Okay, that's why I said let us start it at the foundation. You jump so many paces. Sometimes when you organize something, it might not follow. It might not follow the jump so many paces. Okay, let us lay the foundation so that we understand it. Number one, the tithe was for the Levites. You don't come to eat the tithe of the Levites. Okay, so you came to give a tithe to the priests, right? Now, part of the problem in terms of presentation today is that Christians don't follow the biblical tithe. There are, I can pose it as a question. Let me even ask you, Doctor. What percentage of your income is a tithe?
Yeah, I don't know the percentage. What I know,
according to the law, what?
It's 10%. They say 10%.
Okay, all right. That is false. All right, and the biblical tithe is over 25%. Okay.
Okay.
It's called a tithe.
Okay.
But it goes beyond that. For instance, we are talking of when you bring your tithe to come and eat it in the presence of the Lord. Well, that is the tithe of the third year. The third year, you bring your tithe to the house of the Lord and you eat it in the presence of the Lord. But that's different from the annual tithe. The annual tithe is given for the Levite and also is presented for the stranger, the widow, the poor. Okay, now, all these are not followed in the New Testament, okay, because part of the tithing structure, okay, let's understand the foundation of the tithe. God gave Israel land, right? And he gave them by his power. He drove the people out and gave them the land. He then says they must tithe the land. Okay? So, what the tithe must be something that grows from the land that he gave them. All right? As a principle, it says, I'm the one who gave you this land. You tithe this land. So they gave him in acknowledgement that he gave them the land. So if you are a Jew and you are living in Babylon, you don't tithe because you are not living in the land that God gave Israel. Okay? And the time came when there were more people living in Babylon than were living in Israel. More Jews living in Babylon than were, you know. Remember in 1 Peter, the lady from Babylon sends us greetings. So, two, since it is something that grows on the land, it only applies to two components, agricultural products and livestock, because the livestock eats grass that is on the land. So, if you are a fisherman, you don't pay tithe. If you are a carpenter, you don't pay tithe, because it has nothing to do with the tithing principle. Christian pastors will never tell you this. Okay? They will never tell you this. But let me so that I don't end up preaching the topic. Let me pose them as questions. Let me pose them as questions. Comfort Yandang. Tithing is a law instituted under the law of Moses. Are you with me? Ms. Yandang. She's probably distracted. Samukwa. Good evening.
Good evening, Church.
Yes, I was saying that tithing was instituted under the law of Moses. Does the law of Moses apply to Gentiles?
No, the law of Moses applies to the Jews.
So if the law of Moses only applies to Jews, can tithing apply to Gentiles? Why are you laughing?
It stands to reason that if tithing is part of their law and the law does not apply to Gentiles, then tithing cannot apply to Gentiles because they didn't receive any land from the Lord.
They didn't even receive the law of Moses.
At all.
Okay, so law of Moses. Now, at a certain point in the New Testament, there was a bagarre concerning circumcision. And some people were insisting that Gentiles should be circumcised. And some people were saying, no, you can't bring this law of Moses and apply it to Gentiles. So they had to have a meeting to resolve this matter. And the whole point of the meeting was this: does the law of Moses apply to Gentile Christians? Can you tell me how it was resolved? Are you aware of this particular meeting?
Yeah, I remember there was an incident like that, but I cannot remember exactly how it was resolved. I am inclined to think from my from little memory I may recall that I think they were given the option of uh, um, accepting circumcision if they wished,
No,
and if not,
no.
I can't remember exactly.
We're not given the option at all. Okay. I'll apologize for some of these things. I did not open them beforehand, but let's see if we can take a look at them. We have this in the book of Acts 15:28. Acts 15:28. What was actually resolved at the Jerusalem Council was that the law is not applicable to Gentiles at all. I want us to look at the scripture. If you look at it, I'm going to read verse 24, but really I'm going to verse 28. Verse 24 says that, since we have heard that some who went out from us have troubled you with words, unsettling your souls, saying you must be circumcised and keep the law, to whom we gave no such commandment. Now, what happened is this. After they finished resolving, then they wrote a letter. And this letter was given to Paul and Barnabas to take to all the Gentile churches. And this is what was there. So we didn't give this kind of commandment. It seemed good to us, being assembled with one accord, to send chosen men to you with our beloved Barnabas and Paul, men who have risked their lives for the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. We have therefore sent Judas and Silas, who will also report the same things by word of mouth. Verse 28, for it seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us to lay upon you no greater burden than these necessary things. So what are the only necessary things that they are requiring from Gentiles? That you abstain from things offered to idols, from blood, from things strangled, and from sexual immorality. If you keep yourself from this, you will do well. So the matter was resolved from people to whom Jesus empowered. Understand? It says, what you bind on earth is bound in heaven. What you lose on earth is loosed in heaven. He gave them that power of administration. And they said, you don't, and they had the meeting at the Jerusalem Council. That's what it was called. And they said, all that we are requiring of Gentiles is just these four things. No idol worship, no eating of blood, don't eat things strangled, abstain from sexual immorality. There is nothing here about tithing. Nothing here about tithing. So where do Christian pastors, where did they get the tithing issue from? Somebody is disturbing me on this side. Yes.
Good evening, church. When we were talking about tithing, and in connection with with circumcision and the law of Moses, I would like to try and link these things. Let us say that tithing under the law of Moses, as everything has to do with the law. Also, circumcision has to do with the law. But when we get to, from another angle, I think would be useful to look at it, is from that God is not, in terms of tithing, God is not concerned with us giving him a certain amount of money to show our appreciation of him. What he is concerned with in terms of tithing is us giving of ourselves, our spirit, our entire being, as he himself did for us. And the same thing with circumcision, which is under the law. You have to, of course, be physically circumcised. Circumcision, from my way of looking at it, is a cutting off of that which is not of God, and it's a kind of symbol, cutting yourself off from God so that you can align yourself with him in a pure way. Paul talks of the circumcised heart. So it's your heart, it's your spirit that has to be circumcised. You don't have to go to a doctor and have surgery to circumcise your heart. What they're saying, as with tithes, is that you have to have a spiritual understanding and giving back to God, and also in terms of circumcision with the law, you have to have a spiritual cutting off, a denial of self in terms of adultery, bloodletting, or what all the other things. And this is the same thing that we come across over and over again. When God says you must be born, when Jesus tells Nicodemus, you must be born again, you know, there are certain faiths and certain people like Nicodemus who will interpret it from a physical flesh standpoint and say, does that mean that I have to go back, return to my mother's womb? Of course it does not. It means that you have to be spiritually reborn. You have to spiritually give. You cannot, in essence, give God anything. He says he's the owner of cattle or thousands. You can't actually give him anything, but you can give him by having his spirit and giving to other people. And so many churches, my cousin in New York goes to a church, they have tithes down to a mathematical science. If somebody earns so and so, they have to give this percentage, and then they work out the tax that they have to pay. That to me is completely ridiculous and misses the mark. So just to conclude, God is concerned with us giving of ourselves, everything. That can be practically expressed by giving to others in terms of money, in terms of listening to them when you don't want to listen, stuff like that. Thank you.
Okay, the problem I have with Karen's presentation is that she has generalized tithing into a general principle, and she's brought in circumcision, she's brought in being born again. But let's not overgeneralize tithing. Okay, not all Jews tithed under the Old Testament. Only those who are farmers and kept livestock. So it is not a general principle that you can say it's like circumcising your heart. Circumcising your heart belongs to all believers. Tithing did not even belong to all Jews. Not all Jews were required to tithe. If you are a Jew and you are not living in Israel, you do not tithe. Okay? because we have thieves and robbers operating in the churches now, they have obfuscated all this. They don't want people to know about it. Huh? They don't want people to know about it. Precisely because tithing is tied to the land, God does not accept money as a tithe. You can't give money to God and say you are tithing money. So it is a misnomer what people are doing here. The monetary aspect comes into the equation if you are bringing your tithe all the way to the temple, to Jerusalem. Huh? So the Lord says, sell your crops, sell your animals where you are and collect money. But when you get to Jerusalem, you have to then buy animals back, buy crops back, because he does not accept money as tithe. It is tied to the land. That's why I say, not everybody tithe. Okay? Jesus and his disciples paid no tithes. The apostles did not tithe. Huh? But that's even New Testament. Under the Old Testament, not everybody tithed. Only those that owners of land or owners of livestock. You know, and as Yemisi has said, you don't ask if the tithe is for a Levite, the Levite cannot be, is not a tither. If you are supposed to, if a tithe is also meant for widows, you don't tell widows to tithe. If a tithe is meant for orphans, you don't ask orphans to tithe. If a tithe is meant for strangers, you don't have strangers to tithe. You don't even ask somebody who is a non-Jew to tithe anyway, because he's not part of the covenant of Israel. He's not part of the Commonwealth of Israel. You don't ask a poor man to tithe, which is what they're still doing in the churches today. They're asking poor men to tithe money, which they're using to buy planes and do all kinds of rubbish. Huh? But beyond that, okay, we must emphasize it before we go on with the discussion. The tithe can only be received by a Levite. So Jesus could not receive a tithe because he was from the tribe of Judah. So you can't give tithe to Pastor Jesus. You only give it to Levites. Now, the anomaly at the moment is this. The tribe of Levi has disappeared, no longer exists. Only Judah remains. And now we call all Jews, we assume they are all from Judah. We call them Jews. We assume they are all from Judah because the 10 tribes of Israel are lost. So there is no Levite anymore. So you have this anomaly that the Jews who still subscribe to the law of Moses, the rabbis don't receive tithes because you cannot tell who is a Levite. So if Jewish rabbis cannot receive tithes because they are not Levites and they don't know who is a Levite, how can a Christian who is not even a Jew but a Gentile now say he's paying tithes? To who? Is the Christian pastor a Levite? Of course not. So where does the principle, you know, it's a principle of pastors operating as thieves. And they will preach Malachi 3:10. And man rob God? They will make sure that you don't understand what Malachi is saying. Who is the robber of God? Let me pose it as a question. Femi Aribisala, who is the robber of God? Your hand is up.
No, sorry, I was going to say something before you, and then it just jammed. But I was going to say that, in a sense, I agree with what Auntie Karen is saying, because some of these principles, in terms of our heart condition, I know that, you know, we're talking about, you know, how things originated and all that, but
make a principle that is not of general application, and then make it, and then apply it generally.
Yeah, I know.
It's a misnomer.
I also feel that people have a responsibility. I don't think that, you know, the priests and the pastors are the ones that are supposed to. I mean, this is not the time of Martin Luther. People have access to Bibles. So I don't believe that pastors are responsible for, they are responsible for the deception, but we are responsible for actually accepting the deception and are not really
whether we are accepting, but the fact of the matter is that the pastors themselves are crooks, because at least they claim to read the scripture. And what I was asking you, okay, the question I asked you was that Malachi 3:8-10 says, will a man rob God? Who is Malachi talking about? He's talking about pastors. He was referring to the Levites, the people who were robbing God. Go and read Malachi. Go and read the whole of Malachi. The whole of Malachi 1-3. It's about the Levites, about the pastor. Okay, because I call them today Levitical pastors. That's one of the titles of my chapters. He's talking about the pastors. How are they robbing God? Well, when people bring their tithes, the pastors corner it. You understand? That is, the people themselves bring the tithes. And you had a classical example, the sons of Samuel. Before they listen, they have put their fork in this and they are taking the better part of the meat, etc. I
don't think I think that is even a far example, because I remember in House on the Rock, you know, being in a group of people and we were discussing this tithe. So you have this amount of money on you and you are determined that you're going to take it into a building. And there was one particular guy who was saying, look, well, what if you bump into some woman on the way and she's desperate? I say, you're not. So about at least 99% of us, they said, you're not allowed to give it to her. Of course, I had a problem with this, and that other guy had a problem and said, well, it doesn't really make sense, does it? Because if this was meant to be for the poor, and this woman, he said, well, you know.
The Christian church where people collect tithes will never tell you the tithe is for the poor. They don't tell you that. They don't say it is for the poor. They don't. Part of the problem is this. There is nowhere in Scripture, New Testament, where money was ever collected for putting up a building. Money was only collected, the New Testament, from Matthew to Revelation, for the poor. Only collected for the poor. But the tithe is not given to the poor. Today.
But I was relating it to what Auntie Karen was saying about heart issue, that okay, even if you decide
she's making it a general application.
Yeah, no, I understand. But I'm saying, okay, you've collected this money under false pretenses. At the very least, apply it to, you know.
You can't collect money under false pretenses and then apply it with good intentions. I mean,
yeah, I know, that sounds ridiculous.
If you collected it under false pretenses, you have an agenda. And that agenda is deceit, and it's going to continue. Yes, Benedict.
Good evening, Doctor. I think I want to disagree with my sister. That said they collect it. They say they want to give it to poor. Most time, all the churches, apart from a few of them, they don't collect because they want to give to poor. Because they want to give. They will tell you that tithe is for building church. That they will tell you. They will ask, how do you maintain church? How do you want the pastor to be paid? How do you want them to buy this and this? That's where they hide under. They hide under how do you maintain church? And at the end of the day, even when they collect more than what they use to maintain church, that one they will be using it for their own purpose.
Part of the problem is this, that number one,
in fact, if they want to give poor something, they will not tax church again for under control for poor, not because they want to give it to poor. Okay, that's my contribution.
I said earlier on, God does not accept money as tithe. Okay, so that in itself is a problem. Now, the implication of tithing, and we tell you tithing is 10%, but if we do a study of tithing, it actually goes over 25%, because there are different things, and if you implement tithing the way it's supposed to be done, okay, God says on the 6th year, you don't plant anything. Okay, so if you're even going to collect money, you will say, what about the year of reprieve where no tithe is collected? The pastor is not going to listen to you. But under the New Testament, okay, Jesus says, anybody who does not forsake all he has can't be my disciple. So you can't be talking about 25%. It's telling you to deny yourself. You are saying 10% belongs to God, 90% belongs to you. It's a contradiction in terms. So tithing negates the whole construct of the grace that Jesus has come to establish. Not only that, tithing is under the law. Okay, so, and you can't cherry pick the law. Okay, James 2:10 says that if you disobey a part of the law, you have disobeyed all. So you cannot say you are going to pick tithing out of the law and still insist on it, but you are going to ignore the stoning of children, you're going to ignore so many other things, etc. You are back under the law. Once you pick, you're picking something in law, it means that you still want to, and once you go and pick something under the law, then the cost of the law is back on you, because you cannot fulfill the law, and you only want to look for one element of the law that you want, that you want to even distort for your own convenience. It's not going to work. They are just fooling people. Now, they will tell you that tithing is not about the law. I'm coming here to see. Tithing say that, because Abraham tithed. Abraham never tithed. It's a lie. Abraham did not pay a tithe. Abraham had spoils of war. He didn't tithe any of his income. He had spoils of war. He gave everything away. He gave 10% to Melchizedek, 90% to the king of Salem. He gave everything away, but it wasn't even his money. It wasn't that, so that is not, has nothing to do with tithing. It didn't come from the land of Israel. It's not a tithe. Yes, let me see.
I would think that it's interesting that now that you say it, because I've never also noticed it before, which is that the language of tithing, the modern language of tithing, has to do with ownership. So usually you're talking about, okay, when they're talking to you in churches, they'll say 10% belongs to God, and then you can do the rest, like in essence saying 90% belongs to you, 10% belongs to God. But this idea of ownership in itself is criminal, because 100% belongs to God. So
under the new covenant, we are stewards.
so this I never even thought about it until
Belongs to us. In fact, you know, we are that's why I'm saying that our position is it relates to that of the Levite, who God is their possession. God is our possession, not the money, not the, you know, so everything that we have belongs to God, but God belongs to us. You understand? So we own everything. Okay? So, I mean, if you are still talking, you are negating the whole principle of the new covenant. And you are negating it simply because there are some people that are trying to get to get people's money from them. That's all that is involved. There are some people that have positioned themselves in the church and they want to fleece the flock. They want to collect their money. And they will use whatever it is that they can find to confuse people into believing that it is so. They will tell you that, you know, they will use a scripture that, you know, I mean, that's why I say that it was not applying, the scripture was applying to Levites. Even Malachi 3, 8 to 10 was only applying to Levites because he says, I will curse you. You'll be cursed, you know. Now, God will never curse Israel. Okay? Look, I mean, we established that under Balaam and Balak. Okay? There is no divination against Jacob. Now, a Christian cannot be cursed. Why? Because he is blessed with all spiritual blessings in the heavenly places in Christ. And God can never, ever curse somebody whom he has blessed. It's not possible. So they are trying to squeeze Malachi into, you know, I mean, this is putting new wine into an old bottle. I mean, the whole thing is just going to shatter because it cannot stay there. It just doesn't apply. It does, it's, you know, and they have just fooling Christians into believing that is the case. Yes, Dotun? Because
in fact, the issue I have is that this tithing thing, when I look at it personally, based on my relationship with God, and if I look at it as I am, I know that I'm a child of God. And when I look at it in this modern world, this modern day, and I look at that tithing, I don't believe it, because I believe that everything belongs to God. God is my portion. He is my portion. He is my portion. And that is the only way. That's the only way it can pay me. Because if I say I have, what do I have? What is it that I have? What is it? Is it the salary? I will say, give God 10%, I take 90. Which 90? For what? To do what? Nothing belongs to me. God is my portion. That's why anything that has to do with finance is the one. Is the one that provides. Is the one. Because if Christians have not gotten to a level of going away from tithing, they will, I don't know how to, I can explain it. You understand? It will impoverish them. Because if God is your portion, you have everything. What is it that you want to give? You know, I don't get.
Everything about it is false. It's just falsehood from beginning to end. But you know, I mean, people who have been indoctrinated by pastors, they are afraid of their pastors. They will tell them, you know, do my prophets no harm and all this kind of thing, and people start to shake. It's all a lie that they have been told. It's all a lie. Now, in the Old Testament, nobody brings a tithe to a synagogue. If you apply it to the New Testament, nobody will bring a tithe to a church. Bring all the tithes to the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. The tithe is brought to a storehouse. And it is not money that God is after, it is food that is brought into his storehouse so that the Levites, the poor, all these people can eat. If you tell your pastor today, I'm bringing my tithe, but I'm going to go to the supermarket and I'm going to buy some food products, etc., and bring it, etc., he will tell you, no way, it's not acceptable in this church. You understand? Because although God is not interested in the money, that's what your pastor is interested in. He only wants your money. He only wants your money. Yes, Mr. Oluyemi writes.
Good evening, Church.
Good evening. Okay, it's a lady. Yeah.
Now, I actually had two questions, but you've answered one, so I'll ask the second one. That's part of the Bible where God said when it was recorded that Abraham gave the king Salem, I've forgotten, that he gave him 10%. You find out that is one of the quotations that pastors make when they are talking about that. Now my question is this: what do we call that? As in, why did he give him 10%? Why not 5? Why not 1? Why not any other percentage?
Okay.
Why that particular percentage?
Okay, there were two things that Abraham did. He gave 10% and he gave 90%. Don't stay with just the 10%. I'm saying that Abraham actually gave everything. Okay? But what he gave was not his. He gave spoils of war. Not only that, okay? If you want to use Abraham as your template, Abraham, and you say you call it tithing, fantastic. Abraham only tithed once. There is no evidence that he ever did it again. Okay? It is just something that happened one time. All right? And the principle is not referring to Abraham. It is coming from the law of Moses. It is a law of Moses that established the principles of tithing. It is because the Christian pastor will tell you we are no longer under the law, and then they will come and bring Malachi, which is under the law, that they now run to Abraham to try and hide under Abraham. It's rubbish. You can't be doing all of this. Okay, it can be anything. Abraham gave 10% to Melchizedek. So what? If he gave 20%, so what? He gave 10% to Melchizedek. That that is what happened. He gave 90% to somebody else. It was not called. It was not based on that Moses established tithing in the church. Okay, from Abraham to Moses, there was no tithing. It didn't exist. So the tithing that we know now is under the Mosaic law. And the tithing under the Mosaic law is specific. So I ask you, my sister, why is it that Jews no longer tithe? Let me answer the question to you. Because one, your tithe must be brought to the temple. Okay, now we start seeing the anomalies in the New Testament. Number one, the temple no longer exists. In AD 70, it was burnt down. When the temple was destroyed, all the genealogical records were destroyed. So the tribes were lost. Nobody knows who belongs to what tribe anymore. There are no Levites anymore. Okay? Because part of the tithe was also used to maintain the temple. Now, in the New Testament, the temple is not a building. We are the temple we are the temple of God. Jesus is the temple of God. So who are you bringing the tithe to? Who are you going to bring the tithe to? If you want to really analyze it in then bring the tithe to anybody that is in your church. Okay. 2, it is specifically stated under the law of tithing that you come in the 3rd year and sit in the temple and eat your tithe in the presence of the Lord. They don't do that. You tell a pastor that you want to come and bring food and come and eat it, and that is going to be your tithe. He will tell you, no, this kind of is not acceptable here. Huh? So the whole thing has become distorted. Why? Because people are just interested in your money. And they are now recanting. Efriola said today that he has made a mistake. Benny Hinn said he has made a mistake. They have made a mistake after they have built pensions, after they have bought planes, after they have done all kinds of things. They are now saying, throw away the books that I wrote about it, throw away any tapes about me that are I don't know. There is no new information that has just arisen concerning tithing that has made them to change their mind. Yes, let me see.
You do realize that if you throw away the old book, you're going to buy a new book, right?
We throw away which old book?
I'm sorry, I'm being cynical.
If you
But you see what happens is
close old book.
he's going to write a new book about tithing. So when you throw away the old book, you're going to buy it. So
you think he's trying to market a new book? I don't know. I mean,
definitely.
A lot of people will be offended with him, and I'm sure.
And then he didn't even apologize. I had a problem with that. There was a kind of arrogancy. Oh, I'm not making any apology here. I'm like, yeah, make an apology. You need to,
Let's look at New Testament principles. Number 1, New Testament principles tells us that God does not accept gifts that come from obligation, not of necessity. For God loves a cheerful giver. So you cannot give something because you are afraid that the devourer is going to come upon you, that the heavens will be shut to you. That is not an acceptable offering. Because you are giving an offering out of fear. There is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear. Now, it says, I will open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing that there shall not be room to contain. Now, what blessing is God talking about here? And please, the people who have been paying tithes, who among them have received this blessing? So let me explain, because the word of God cannot be broken. The blessing that opens the windows of heaven and for which there is no room to contain is the blessing of forgiveness that we received through Christ. That is the blessing that is outrageous. That is the blessing that opens everything to us. Now, so what happens is this: by the time you transition into the New Testament, you discover that God's blessings are no longer physical. He can give you gifts. They are not blessings. His blessings are now spiritual blessings. And if you have accepted his son, Jesus Christ, as Lord and Savior, you are blessed with every spiritual blessing. So that blessing is not conditional upon your paying of tithes. Let nobody fool you. Adeboye does not hold the key of heaven that they can say you will not go to heaven. I mean, you can say you will not come to redeem camp. But who told him that he is going to heaven? He doesn't know. Let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he falls. How does he determine who goes to heaven because they gave money to redeem? You can't make those kinds of statements. They're outrageous. Huh? They speak desperation. We just are now determined willy-nilly to get the money out of these people that are now not giving as much as you want them to give before. Now, if a child is born of God, if a child is a child of God, he's a giver. That is in his nature. If he's not a giver, he is not of God, because God loves so much that he gave. Giving is natural to a son of God. So you don't have to be witchcraft into it. You don't have to be manipulated to give. You don't have to be told that something is going to happen. A devourer, I mean, I have, at the time period, I bought every book that Oyedepo wrote. Huh? One of them, he said, a woman rats ate the cables in her car because she did not pay tithe. I wrote this, in my articles of faith. I put his name there. This is rubbish. He said, by the time they analyzed it, they found out that if you recabled it, the rats ate the cables again. Recabled it, rats ate the cable again. Until he now discovered that she hasn't been paying her tithe. So when she's not paying her tithe, the rats stop eating the cables. This is just witchcraft. This is just witchcraft. How many people don't pay tithe and no rat eats their cables? Huh? If the blessing of tithing is material wealth, why is it that tithers are not the richest people on earth? Why is it that Christians are not the richest people on earth? Huh? It's all a lie. It's all rubbish. It's all rubbish. Yes, yeah, me see.
I always wondered about money as well, because there's a lot of emphasis on money. And whenever we talk about giving, where we sort of psychologically equate it to money. And God had to sort of heal me of that, because every time I dreamt that somebody was giving me money in dreams, it was never money. It was always something else.
Yes.
So it's interesting that even now I still have that, because of, obviously I went to Pentecostal churches all my life. I have a fixation on this idea that somebody's going to turn up and give me this amount of money, and I need that money to sort of live. So it's quite difficult to
You see, money is not a currency of the kingdom of God. Jesus said, whose picture is on money? Give that which belongs to Caesar to Caesar. The picture that is on money is of Caesar. You will see Obafemi Awolowo there. You will see Nnamdi Azikiwe there. Huh? Now, where is God's picture? It is in man. Man is created in the image and likeness of God. So give man to God. It is man that is offered to God, not money. Okay, because the image and likeness of God is in us. We belong to him. He belongs to us. Huh? And so, you have money grubbers. That's a problem. You have money grubbers that are pastors. They're looking for money. They're looking for money. All they're interested in is money. So everything is monetized. Offering time is the blessing time. People don't say offering time. People say blessing time, and they're working on people psychologically. Huh? They're only blessed when it is time to give offering. Rubbish. Rubbish. Huh? How did God's blessing becomes conditional? He says, he allows the rain to shine, when the sun to shine on the good and on the evil, the rain to fall on the good and on the evil. He says, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy. He does things according to his will, which he fashions in himself. God does not respond to what we do. We are the one who respond to what God does. We don't teleguide God. We cannot manipulate God. You want to say something? Okay, 1 minute.
Well, I think it's interesting in terms of the language, that what I was saying earlier, I'd just like to say it in another way, that if one wanted to be kind to these pastors and so on who demand tithing, the deception about tithing is actually quite deep. It's not only conning the congregation, but it's a refusal perhaps to speak the language of the Spirit. And I think it's significant that we call the slang word for money is bread. Do you have any bread? And when in fact, Jesus referred to himself as the bread of life. In other words, there is always, seems to me, to be an inability or a difficulty in entering that kind of mindset, which is not based on practicality. Now, the deception aspect of tithing is not that pastors deceive. It's not only that pastors deceive the congregation into giving tithes, etc. But I think it's more that it doesn't negate tithing, because God wants us to give of himself. And if we are him, then we would also give. It doesn't mean that because we don't have to tithe, that we don't have to give us a certain amount of money, that we do not have to give. Because some people might interpret it to mean that, oh, I don't have to tithe, I don't have to give money to the church or whatever. We are expected to do that, not because of a giving that is outside of us, if you see what I mean, but because we have Christ's DNA, we give everything. It's like one of the most fantastic phrases of giving to me is into thy hands I commend my spirit. That's a hard act to follow. Thank you.
But I want us to look at briefly at two scriptures in this discussion. One is Deuteronomy 29 or 26:12. I think I made a mistake there. You see, there are all kinds of things that have to do with tithing that is ignored. You know that the man who receives tithes is not allowed to have landed property. They will not tell you that because the pastor has a house, okay? But under the law, they are not allowed to have landed property. The Levite doesn't have landed property because everything is like he doesn't have possessions, because God says, I am their portion. I am their portion. And that is really, that's why I'm saying that applies to us generally as believers under the new covenant. Because we are not tied to any possessions anymore anyway, possessions that are going to leave behind. There's no point being tied to them. They're going to leave them behind. So our portion is really is God. Let me see if I can find this. Okay. Let me open it from verse 12. When you have finished laying aside all the tithe of your increase in the third year, the year of tithing. See, they don't tell you about these different years. Say the first year, the third year, the seventh year. They will not tell you about all those because they want it to be first year, second year, third year, all the way. And I've given it to the Levites, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, so that they may eat within your gates and be filled. You're not even bringing it to church. And then you shall say before the Lord your God, I have removed the holy tithe from my house, and also have given them to the tithe, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, according to all your commandments which you have commanded me. I have not transgressed your commandments, nor have I forgotten them. So you can invite people into your house. In the Old Testament, as tithing. Look, if I didn't understand tithing as a nullity right from the beginning, I would not have a ministry. Because at the same time, I was spending over 80% of my income. I wasn't basing it on 10%. I was spending over 80% of my income on things that had to do with God. The other one I want us to look at is Mark 12:32. Because there are some people that think that because I say tithing is not under the new covenant, means that now I can spend all my money. I don't have to. Then you are really not of God. Because if you are of God, you will be a giver. Mark 12:32. In fact, let's look at it from verse 28. Then one of the scribes came, and having heard them reasoning together, perceiving that he had answered them well, asked him, which is the first commandment of all? Jesus answered him, the first of all the commandments is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. And the second, like it, is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. So the scribe said to him, well said, teacher, you have spoken the truth. For there is one God, and there is no other but he. And to love him with all the heart, with all the understanding, with all the soul, and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself is more than all the whole burnt offerings and sacrifices. Now, when Jesus saw that he answered wisely, he said to him, you are not far from the kingdom of God. This one understood that all these tithe, Jesus said that they are the minor things of the law. The big things are mercy, to be concerned for your neighbor, to be, those are the major things of the law. But if If you go to churches this day, you will think that tithing is the main thing. It's what they will talk about every service. They will bring somebody to read Malachi 3, 8 to 10 to you. Every service. Jesus asked Peter, please, do the son pay tax? The son of a king pay tax to the king? No, he said, then we are free. God does not expect his children to pay tax to him. Modupe, I feel that you belong to a different tradition.
Sir?
I said, I have a feeling that you belong to a different tradition, so this kind of message might be a bit difficult for you.
Not really, sir. Just, it's a dicey topic, really, but
What is dicey about it? Why do you think it's dicey?
let me say controversial.
I don't think, it is so straightforward in scripture. I don't see how it can be controversial.
It is when you hear from other people's point of view, fine. But for us that were born in a certain type of environment where even as a child you are made to understand that yes, even if you are given 10 kobo, you must bring 1 kobo out of it, and then you grew up with that you grew up in such environment, and somehow you've been conditioned to believe that it takes it takes some kind of drastic change. It takes some kind of drastic steps for you to change, but we are getting there, sir.
Some of the most impressive people for me is a Muslim that becomes a Christian. And I really don't think it's that difficult. It is the Holy Spirit that changes people's hearts. Yes, Mr. Adeleke.
Yes, sir. There's always this scripture that I used to wonder, how does the pastors and the scribe, how do they interpret it? When Jesus told Peter, said, Peter, do you love me? He said, yes, I do. He asked Peter like 3 times. He now said, if you love me, feed my sheep. That word, feed my sheep, when I think about it, I say, how do pastors and reverend, all those ones, how do they interpret it? They don't feed the sheep. They collect from the sheep. They gather as much as they can gather. It's not only tithe. They will collect tithe. They will collect building fund. They will give all sorts of things. They will tell first fruit, last fruit. I don't know. Different. I don't understand it. Are they feeding the sheep or what? It's something that baffles me every time I just think about that quote alone. It's just, I don't know.
Not the type. Biggest ripoff is the first fruit. Because the first fruit is, you are supposed to hand over your entire salary in January to the pastor. You just carry the whole thing. Now, imagine a church of 500 people and everybody carries their first salary and they give it to a pastor. He doesn't have to work again. Huh? They just carry everything to give it to one man. Barnabas, where have you been, sir?
Good evening, sir. Good evening, church. I've been around, just that I've been having some challenges. Yesterday I was
what kind of challenges?
with my phone. So I'm unable to connect for a couple of days. Yesterday I was on the road, so I wasn't able to connect also. Okay. But we thank God. Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to add a little on what Dotun said. So, he said, he quoted a verse that said, Jesus asked him, if you love me, feed my sheep. So I think that presentation of the pastors that we have today not feeding the sheep, I think the question we need to take a step back to ask whether they really love God or not. Because Jesus asked Peter if he loves him, and he said yes. He said, okay, if you love me, feed my sheep. I believe if anybody who loves God in the context that Jesus was asking, the person will not do what some of the pastors are doing today. I have come to a conclusion that some of the people who call themselves pastors are not necessarily called. Probably maybe they just stumble on it. And I always use this as an example. I've said it before, where the fellowship or the assembly I you go to school to go and learn the pastor thing, right? So somebody will need to teach you all these things. You're delivering a sermon. You're delivering a sermon based on what somebody taught you. So I think part of the challenge that we have today is most people who emphasize on all these kind of means to rip off their members. I don't believe they love God. If they do love God, I don't think they will be doing that. Thank you.
I'll show you a scripture which when I see shepherd in the Bible, I translate it to pastor. Because you see, it's the same word, poimen, that is used in the Old Testament to describe shepherd, that is used in the New Testament. So why do we call it something else in the New Testament and call it something else in the Old Testament? So when I quote this in my book, anywhere I see shepherd is a pastor. So I will say, Jesus says, I am the good pastor. Now, I can give you so many different things about pastors. Okay. Now, this Isaiah 56, verse 11. It says, yes, they are greedy dogs which never have enough. And they are pastors who cannot understand. They all look to their own way, everyone for his own gain. Everyone for his own gain from his own territory. There is one in Hosea. Okay, different people want to talk. There's one in Hosea that talk about pastors waylaying people. Pastors are armed robbers. Let me give the mic to Sam, and I'll try and open it while he's talking. Sam.
Okay. Yes. I wanted to say something in connection with what Dotun said when he said, how do these pastors interpret what Jesus Christ said, that Peter should feed his flock? Well, first of all, the pastors will tell you that they are feeding the flock with the word. So that's the first thing they will tell you. But I wanted to draw attention. Is this not, are they not drawing support from the statement of Paul, where he said, I can't remember exactly how he said to one of the churches that if we have ministered unto you, is it bad if we should receive, some gifts from you, something like that? I don't remember the exact.
I know what you're talking about.
Sorry?
I know what you're talking about.
Paul was the one who said to these people that if they have ministered unto the church, that is it bad if they should receive gifts from them? I'm paraphrasing. So it could be that some of these pastors may be using that also as a crutch to lean on. So So even inside the Bible, there are so many things. Anybody wants to do anything, you must find one scripture that will support. So a lot of them, it is likely that they would have seen that one that Paul said. And since Paul is the major Bible writer, and is held in very high esteem, if Paul says that having ministered unto the church, there is nothing wrong with if he receives gifts from them. So the pastors will now, in response to what Dotun has asked, will simply say that they have ministered unto the congregation, and so is there anything wrong for them to receive gifts from them? So I think they have a precedent somewhere that they are relying on.
And Paul himself also contradicts that somewhere else in the scripture. I mean, my book is against pastors. Now, my translation says that I am the good pastor, says Jesus. Now, if he is the good pastor, all other pastors are bad. There is only one good pastor. Okay? And he said in his ministry, he said, there will be one shepherd, one flock and one shepherd. So he is the only pastor. All other pastors, to me, are fake. Now, I give you an example. It's Hosea 6:9 that I said I would try to open while you were talking. Okay? There are so many examples of them. I mean, God condemned pastors in the Old Testament, and he says, I'm going to replace them with one pastor. I was talking about Jesus. Okay? Now, this Hosea 6:9 says, as bands of robbers lie in wait for a man, so the company of priests murder on the way to Shechem. Now, who are the people that are armed robbers on the way to Shechem? The priests. Shechem was a city of priests, and the armed robbers on the way were the priests. They were the one waylaying people and stealing from them. Yes, hear me, see.
I think that it is important what usually happens with people is that, okay, so they've gone into somebody's church and the person says, oh, I've changed my mind. And they just, at the end of the day, I feel that people are going to have to be responsible for their own beliefs in God. And I'm still finding that a lot of people are refusing. All of the things that you read are instructing people that they need to be listening to God for themselves, but we're not doing it. And so we're still kind of blaming pastors and blaming, but at the end of the day, we are responsible. I don't think that anybody's going to get to heaven and then they'll say, you can say, oh, it was my pastor that made me do anything.
But that does not make the pastors not guilty. Pastors,
no, it doesn't, but I think we really have to be careful so we don't over blame, because the pastor comes from amongst, it's not like he's God, he comes from amongst men, and we're all anointed.
Some of them are crooks. Look, let me give you a recent example. A man says that God has told him that he will be the next president of Nigeria after Buhari. Okay? And he preached this, okay? So he pays 100 million. He's a pastor of a church. So he pays 100 million and runs for the presidency to be a presidential candidate under the PDP. He did not get any votes. Nobody voted for him. Now, are there any repercussions? He's going to go back to the same people that he's told that God told him that he will be president. And they will nobody is going to question him that, Ogasa. So what happened?
Yeah, but this is my problem, because that money came from someone. whoever it was that gave him that money enabled him. So it's not like even if he's using medicine for these people, at some point they're going to have to take responsibility. Okay, so the Bible says that
nobody might give him the money, might just take it from the church's money.
yes, but by the fruits,
But I'm saying
if you have a pastor,
why is it that they don't question him when he comes back and say, you know,
yeah, exactly.
what's going
to the church? So how will those same people be blaming? Because you can hear people in the video. I think that's what interests me. So, you know, the pastor in this Creflo Dollar guy is standing in front of people. He's talking to them, and you can hear murmuring. But I don't know. I feel like there should be more. We have a problem with this because
I think some people should get up and leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that because, you know, I mean, if they believe in him somehow, they have tied their destiny to him. Yes, Doctor.
Well, sometimes, as EMC was saying, it's not easy to blame the congregation. It's a bit difficult because I know that before I was called too, because before God brought me out, I was under the same thing. I was there. The foundation was so solid, and I think that was the right place. But when God is ready for me, he brought me out. It's like a bondage. There are a lot of people that are under bondage, under indoctrination. They've been for so many years. You understand? So sometimes the reason why we can't blame the member is God makes things beautiful in his own time. It's going to be time, it's going to come. God is going to take them away. Let the shepherd or the pastor be lying and be doing his own, you know. But God, you know. So it might be a bit difficult to say that. Why don't they leave that place? Why don't they? Well, I don't know. It's just you know, because it takes God's grace to pull me to out. You know, I was there before. I was one of them. I was one. Me too. I believe it. I've been paying tithes for so many years. Someone will say, "Okay, bring the last couple in your pocket now. You see. You know, say if you pay, you know, different kinds of different kind of nonsense that I won't believe. Well, God, thank God for His grace and mercy, you know, and I believe that God one day remove whoever that is under that bondage too, you know. Thank you, sir.
Let me tell one story. I donated a shop to a church, you know, put all kinds of Christian tapes there, 6 televisions, AC, you know, I created booths, about 6 booths for people to come and watch, to come and listen to messages, blah, 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 etc. This was in Yaba. Then the pastor came to my house. And when he came to see me, he said, some of the people in the shop, some of the ladies in the shop are wearing earrings. So I said, so what? So he said, you know, well, he's concerned about me because he doesn't want me to miss heaven. You know, when he said this, my wife pounced on him. Oh,
please, can you expatiate? Like, what are the earrings going to do to make you miss heaven?
You know, my wife pounced on me and said, you know, who do you think you are talking to? The man was scared. What kind of nonsense is that? Huh? Within 5 minutes, the man left. You know, I mean, this kind of witchcraft, I thought maybe he thought we were idiots. You know, you are new members of the church. But, you know, if people do all, you know, I mean, they're wearing earrings, and they will not get to heaven because of earrings. So earrings now is now the determinant for getting to heaven. Oh my show. Yes, Modupe.
I think I think one of the reasons why we can't blame these pastors is because generally people don't want to grow. Most people, they just want to put everything on their pastors. It kind of frees them from accountability.
Yeah.
So to balance that up, they end up doing everything and anything these pastors ask them to do. I mean, most people would do. I know of people who only open their Bible when they are in church, as in just during services, either on Sunday or that is if they go for weekly services anyway. Once they are out of the church, that is it. And they are always quick to tell you, my pastor said, my pastor said. So for those kind of people who hardly read the Bible on their own, how do you expect them to know some things? So rather than studying on their own, they prefer to just listen to what the pastor says. And because, of course, like I said, it makes them to be, it doesn't make them to be accountable. So it's kind of easy. It's a kind of easy life for them. And this is, of course, one of the repercussions. They don't know the right thing. At least, and that is my own that is what I think.
Let me end with a story. I have lots of stories about pastors. Now, I have a friend who, you know, there was a time in my life when I was going to several churches at the same time. I was a young Christian then. And we were going to the Zoe Ministries worldwide. That's what they call them. Zoe Ministries worldwide. So now in that church, in the parish, somebody came at night and stole the generator. So the pastor said that the members of the church should not be told. Otherwise, they will reach the conclusion that the Holy Ghost is not in this church. So my friend has a generator which he rents out for people for occasions, etc. So the pastor said that, you know, maybe he could lend the generator to the church. So he brought the generator to the church. So 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they didn't pay him any money for the generator. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, the generator is there in the church. So, he went to see the pastor that, you know, I mean, would he have his generator back? And the pastor was angry, was livid. I said, what kind of human being are you? Don't you have the common sense to know that you should give the church this generator? Don't you know, and I'm quoting him now, that we can withhold your blessing? So my friend came to see me and said, look, oh, he's in trouble. Oh. These people want to take his generator. This is what the pastor said. I said, Jide, you know what you need to do? Hire a van. Don't have any discussion with the pastor. Just go and carry your generator and get out of there. That's what he did. Now, some years later, I was in Sweet Sensation. And a man tapped me on the back. And when I turned, it was this same pastor. I said, Dr. Aribisala, why you did that? I said, my office is up the road here. I said, what? So he followed me after lunch, followed me all the way. Then he came to Healing Wings. And then he looked, so, you know, I mean, we had a different arrangement. Then he saw where we had the fellowship, the prayer room, the counseling cubicles, etc. And then we ended up, he came to my office, he sat down in front of me. Then he was looking at his finger, looking, you know, it was a deadly silence. Then he looked up to me and said, so you are now a pastor. I'm not a pastor, but you know, says, you know, then he started apologizing to me. I never said anything to this man. He said, you know, that he needs to apologize for all the rubbish you were doing in those days. You know, I think that so he was convinced that I must know better about all those things now. The man is late now. I don't know how he died. There was a time he asked for offering, and he said, we are not collecting Naira, we are collecting dollars or pound sterling. And that people must give it in, you know, and people should start raising their hands. Nobody did. Then he started calling out people, you, dollars, you, pounds, you know, I mean, we're doing all these kinds of rubbish in those days. But please pray for us. Let us close this meeting.
Father Lord, we thank you. We thank you. We thank you once again. Father, we thank you. We thank you for the words. Thank you for your understanding. We thank you for the wisdom. Thank you for the direction. Father, we thank you, Jehovah Lord, everlasting King of Kings. We appreciate you because you are switch on light in our understanding. Father, we thank you. As we are here in Holy Spirit, help us to walk according to your will. Help us to practicalize your ways. Father, help us in every area of our life. We want you to be our portion because you are our portion. Jehovah Lord, you are our inheritance. You are greater than any tithe. You are greater than any gift. You are greater than anything. You are the one. You are our life. You are the one that we need. In all situations, you are enough. In all situations, you are our deliverer. In all situations, you are our provider. In all situations, you are our healer. Father, we thank you. As we are moving on, Holy Spirit, Lord, Jehovah, King of Kings, Lord, Lord, we want to hear from you. Father, we want to hear from you. We want you to speak to us, Holy Spirit, Lord. We want you to speak to us, your word of peace in our life, in our work, in everything we do. Father, speak your word of peace in our hearts. For in Jesus' mighty name we have prayed. Amen. Amen and amen.
There's a question I wanted to ask you. You can answer it. I got a phone call today that one of these big time pastors of Prep wants to invite me to come and minister in his church. I'm wondering, do I want to go to these establishments kind of? I used to be a president of PFN. Should I accept that kind of invitation? Anybody have any opinion on this?
Doctor, is it based on anyone's message or based on the message that they will give you? Because you are going to spoil this for them. I'm going to spoil that party. It is based on anyone's message.
Why are you inviting me?
You spoil party for them. I even the members also they will catch cold because they will say they've not seen this kind of message before.
Okay, thank you. Say to the righteous, you are the apple of God's eye, Samukwa.
You are the apple of eyes. Benedict, you are the apple of God's eyes. Yeah, Mr.
You are the apple of God's eye. Dotun Baila Gulos Debbie. You are the apple of God's eyes. Modupe Yemisi. Benedict. God bless you all.
Yeah, the apple of God's eye. God bless everyone.